Is water meth really as good as they sell it for? Well, we're gonna find out in today's video. We're gonna take our car and data log 2 runs. One run with water meth and one run without water meth. And then we're gonna compare the two files and see, does it really improve your intake air temps? Does it really help you with knock? Well, we're gonna find out in this video. So I just want to let you guys know, the current water meth kit that I have in my car is like at its lowest. Like, I can't imagine anyone going lower than this. Basically, I've got a very small nozzle, which is a 180cc nozzle. Basically, it means in 1 minute it injects 180 milliliters of water meth. That is, I'm running a 50% blend, 50% water and 50% methanol. But please do note that a 50% mixture doesn't mean that it's 50%. It actually means that it is 60% methanol and 40% water. Why? Because the ratio is according to weight. And then also I did notice that my controller is basically switching off, let's say anything above 6,000 to 7,000 RPMs. I still have got some fine tweaking to do, but anyway, what the log is going to show us will definitely indicate if it is working or not. Oh yeah, before I forget, I also have a stage 1 controller. So anyway, this should be fun. Let's go hit the road and do our first log without the water meth. So basically, in the boot, I've got, by my fuse box, I've got a cable I can just pull out. That is a remote cable, so if there's no power going to it, it means the water meth kit will not come on. In that case, we can do our first log without the water meth. Okay, so here goes our first log without the water meth. Car pulling good as always. 7,000 RPMs. Alright, so you guys heard that beep? That's just my speed alarm. So anyway, let's quickly turn around home again, put that plug back in, and we're gonna do another data log with the water meth. Okay, and here we go. Now with water meth, 3rd gear pull. Oh yeah, baby. There we go, 7,000 RPMs again. I decided to come inside the house. In the car, it's just boiling. The laptop always runs out of charge. I always have to force down the last part of the video so the battery doesn't die. Over here, I don't have to worry about it. Let's quickly look at the logs. This log we're seeing right over here in the top left corner, it says without the methanol. So basically, first thing that I'm seeing is that right over here, this big lump over here is a bunch of knock. As you guys can see, even at the time, we're having knock on all 4 cylinders, which is not good. Initially, you want your graph to look like this until forever. You never want to see any knock. There is no specific way to say a certain amount of knock is good and a certain amount of knock is not good, but I would like to say personal opinion. Once again, this is personal. I don't want to see anything more than -3 knock. More than -3 knock is just overboard. As you guys can see over here, we're even seeing -6 knock, which is not good. So anyway, we are experiencing some knock, like I mentioned, at 4,300 RPMs. This is basically this red line going up all the way over here, and it's basically, as you guys can see, it's all the way until we shift it.
So now let's quickly look at the intake air temps. So where is it? Is this one over here? So as you guys can see, the intake air temps is the green one. So basically we started off at, let's say over there, we started off at about 30 degrees. But we can actually, let's move it up a little bit. I mean, let's be a little bit, because as you guys can see right over here, TPS, throttle position sensor, that's basically when we put our foot flat. We were at 31 degrees. So basically, as we accelerated, as you see the RPMs goes up, so does this green line also go up. And that's something you don't want to see. So we actually hit 46 degrees Celsius. That means we went literally, I'm not lying, from 31 degrees Celsius intake air temps to 46 degrees. That is literally a 15 degrees increase in temperature, right? That is not good. Literally, if your intercooler is sufficient, it was supposed to stay the same intake air temps or even improve. It was not supposed to increase like it did. Right, so then what we're going to look at second lastly is we're going to look at our short-term fuel trims. This is a big subject. I'm not going to go in too much depth with this. Basically, all you need to know is that if your car is requesting, let's say 14.7 AFR, and at that moment when it's requesting it, you're like at 14 AFR, which means that you're 0.7 off. Basically, what your car does is it pulls a certain percentage of fuel out. Pulls a certain percentage of fuel out in order for it to get it back from 14 to 14.7. So you will see that the short-term fuel trim is in percentages. And what I basically want you to see is basically since we put our foot on throttle, we went from positive to basically into a negative. So we're there at a -2, -4, and the worst percentage you're supposed to see, or you don't want to see anything more than 5%. So here we're still in border, 4%, 3%, 2%. We even went down to 1% over there, and we came back up to 2, 3, and right before we shifted, 4%. So you guys can see we're within the short-term fuel trim border. The reason why I'm showing you this is because as soon as the water meth system injects this water meth, you'll actually see it's fluctuating a little bit more. The percentage will actually be a little bit higher because of the added fuel. So anyway, now what we're going to do is we're going to look at our max torque and our horsepower. So with HP tuners, you can have like a kind of a dyno. So obviously it's not 100% accurate, but let's see what happens. So basically we reach our max torque for this pool was 385 Newton meters. Please note that obviously with meth or without meth, they should really be similar because basically if you look at it, there was no knock. So there's no initial reason why it will be more or less. So then if we continue our pool, I would say the max will be 318.6. And already there you guys can see we're starting to experience knock. And as we experience more and more knock, the horsepower just drops off. Also, do note this is a small turbo car. They don't have that much boost and power to actually hold the high RPMs. So as you guys can see, 318.6 was the horsepower we basically made. Alright, so that is without meth. Let's quickly look with meth. Where do we start? Let's quickly start with the intake air temp. Remember, intake air temp is this green one over here. Just quickly a recap. Remember I told you guys in the start of the video that basically for whatever reason my water meth kit, it switches off at high RPMs. For what reason? I don't know. I think maybe the power going towards the methanol kit is just too little.
And then also I did notice that my controller is basically switching off, let's say anything above 6,000 to 7,000 RPMs. I still have got some fine tweaking to do.
So anyway, if we do look basically over here, we started off at 36 degrees Celsius, which is even worse than with the first log. Remember, your second log will always be worse than your first log. If you're logging, you will notice that straight away. So anyway, basically, we started off at 36 degrees Celsius. Obviously, we just did our run. Our car is hot and all of that kind of things. So as we accelerated, it actually dropped to 35 degrees Celsius. I mean, that's unseen. It's unbelievable already. And then it keeps it at 35 degrees Celsius. You can see the car is happy until we experience some knock at 5,267 RPMs. please do note one thing. Do you see that my intake air temps basically goes up? So it goes from 35 to 36 up to about 39 degrees, which means that it only went up with 4 degrees instead of 15 degrees like we saw without the water meth. But also this is basically because my water meth system stops injecting. I still need to sort out that problem. So basically from this point, I would say my water meth system stops injecting, and that's why we're experiencing some knock. Alright, so already you can see the car is doing so much better, is more knock resistant. So let's quickly go to our first crop. We started to experience knock at 4,300 RPMs, and basically with our second log, here it is, we only get knock at 5,300 RPMs, which is 1,000 RPMs later, and it's when the water meth system stops spraying. Okay, so already you can see the water meth system is doing good according to intake air temps and knock. So we did see some timing being pulled. Both of them is only 2 cylinders here, which is -3. We did actually go to a -6 on cylinder number 4, which was exactly the same as on the without the water meth. Alright, so what we're going to look now at is we're going to look at the short-term fuel trim. So I want to show you guys that you can see basically we went to 4%, 3%, 3%, 4%, 3%. We never touched that 1% like we did before. Up until basically over here, we were 3.5%, and it just stayed 3% across. Very similar to without the water meth. So already it's showing you that with the additional fuel, the additional little bit of octane the car is receiving is basically making the car run a little bit richer. So what a car is doing is actually fueling a little bit less with the injectors to compensate to get your air to fuel ratio mixture in its ratio. So let's quickly look at our max torque. So basically our max torque is 388 newton meters. Like I'm always saying, your second log will never be as good as your first log, but here yet again we see 3 degrees better, 3 newton meters more with the water meth kit. It can maybe be because the intake air temps at the specific point is a little bit better, or with the little bit of additional increasing octane fuel. So then, as soon as we start going up, we basically pass, where is it? We pass the 318.6 horsepower already, and we go up to 325.5 horsepower, which is already, it's not much, it's like 7 or 8 horsepower, but that's exactly when we're starting to experience some knock. And as you guys can see, we're already starting to pull degrees timing out of here, so maybe we could have even seen 330 horsepower. Maybe I'm a bit too over ambitious right now, but I like to dream big. Anyway, so as you guys can see, if we can sort out this problem for the water meth to actually stay on, the car will do so much better. I'm literally sweating here. It is boiling today. And as you guys can see, the car is doing better with methanol than without methanol. So anyway guys, we're gonna drop this video right over here. If you have got any questions, please do not ask me. Drop them in the comments, I'll see to get to them. And then I do appreciate everyone. If you have stayed till now, thank you for the support. You're awesome, and I'll see all of you guys in the next video. Hopefully it's when we fix this water meth kit.